Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully, everyone can hear me today. My name is Chris Good. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at Tab9. For folks who have not joined us before, Tab9, I should say Tab9 Office Hours, is a interactive session where we're going to do sort of tell a story as we do every week, and then we graduate sort of into a live demo and QA. But this whole session is meant to be very interactive. So if there's something that I'm talking about that folks here want to dive deeper in, or you have some follow-up questions, please throw them in the chat. I will be monitoring that as closely as I can as a one-man team, but feel free to introduce yourself and let's get started. So we're going to be talking specifically today about aerospace and defense and the importance of air-gapped and on-prem deployments and what those really mean and entail. Now, prior to getting there, though, I think it's important for us to all sort of level set on the market and where folks are currently at. And in this case, let's talk about the state of adoption. So independent surveys are clearly showing this widespread AI adoption amongst developers. And in the 2024 Stack Overflow Developer Survey, it shows a 76% of developers plan or are currently using AI coding tools, up from 70% the year before. And a strong 72% hold a very favorable attitude towards these tools. Now, developers clearly recognize the benefits, 81% citing an increase in productivity as their top benefit of these AI dev tools, followed by speeding up learning at 62% and improving efficiency at 58%. So in other words, a vast majority of developers see AI assistance as a key to getting more done in less time. Now, that's not really a surprise, right? Because AI is fundamentally changing software development. And the productivity gains for using AI code assistance for engineering teams have been incredible. And that's regardless of what tool you're using, whether it's an AI code assistant or an LLM. These solutions have real value and are helping engineering teams deliver faster. And here at Tab9, the increase we've seen our customers come to expect ranges from, excuse me, on the low end, 30%, and on the high end, around 50%, right? As an increase in productivity gains across the full set of tasks that constitute the SDLC. Now, AI adoption, though, in aerospace or defense or these privacy or security conscious industries is a little different. There is a different evaluation criteria that can stop procurement, for example, even for great tools that the rest of the market uses. Now, in national security environments, right, an air gap is not symbolic, right? It's an operational doctrine. It represents the final line of defense between sovereign systems and external threat surfaces. So when you work inside the wire, right, every tool, every process, every byte must adhere to mission posture. Now that means no assumptions. That means no background connections. That means no tolerance for fallback behaviors. AI tooling is no exception. In fact, it greatly raises the stakes here. Now, most generative AI platforms are built with public cloud infrastructure in mind, right? They assume persistent internet connectivity, dynamic versioning, and opaque logging to external telemetry systems. And that entire architecture is incompatible with the operational mandates of CIF or SCIFS's SCIFs. I don't know. That would be, people pronounce that acronym fully. The DODIN enclaves and sovereign engineering programs. Now, Tab9, by contrast, was purpose-built to run inside the wire. And we are the only I'll say that again, the only AI software development platform that Skiff. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You will be hearing me say that word now correctly the rest of the time, but I appreciate you stopping me here early. Thank you very much, Sam. Now, by contrast, Tabnine was purpose-built to run inside the wire. We are the only AI software dev platform that offers on-prem or air-gap deployment models, right? And of course, we support SaaS and VPC, but that isn't really what we're here to talk about today, right? No component relies on outbound network calls, model inference, context processing, code generation, validation. Excuse me. All of it happens inside your perimeter, right? So this is not public, or I should say, this is not a patch or adaptation. It is the core of our design. So whether you're supporting avionics code, ISR platforms, missile guidance, algorithms, Tabnine delivers AI capabilities that you need in the posture that your mission demands. Now, let's go here. The alphabet of compliance in defense and aerospace ecosystem, security is not defined by vendor claims, but by adherence to frameworks. And these frameworks define how data is stored, processed, and protected. And they're not static checklists. They evolve, they compound, they overlap in highly specific ways depending on program type, mission, role, and operating jurisdiction. A skiff, for example, doesn't just require physical isolation. It mandates that no component of your stack can initiate or respond to external digital communication. The DODIN compliance adds another layer, right? It mandates full operational residency within DoD authorized infrastructure. And CMMC requires auditable enforcement of these security policies. ITAR eliminates or limits where and how defense tech data can be handled down to the inference output. And for NATO and EU aligned programs, digital sovereignty means no external model access, no shared control planes, no foreign telemetry, right? So Tab9 was designed to conform to this regulatory topography. And our architecture never relies on cloud inference. There's no embedded telemetry pipeline. Logs and context stay local. We don't create shared service environments across customers. There's a zero data retention policy. And we don't surprise your compliance officer with silent background upgrades. And this is how you build a system that earns its place inside the perimeter. Now, zero trust itself is often misinterpreted as a buzzword. But in defense software architecture, it is doctrine, right? The principle is simple. Assume nothing, verify everything. No component, no user, and no service gets implicit trust. And in this context, AI tools must operate with complete transparency and control. Now, otherwise, they introduce a breach vector and not a capability. Now, with Tab9, trust is not something that you have to opt into. It is guaranteed by architecture. You run our software on your infrastructure. You choose the model weights. You configure the inference rules. All inputs and outputs are made inside your controlled environment. And there's no hidden metadata exchange, no phone home analytics, and no updates that could alter model behavior without recertification. So for systems where every line of code must be defensible in front of an audit board, and trust must be made visible, Tab9 provides full traceability for every AI interaction, where it came from, what context it used, what rules it followed, who reviewed it. You don't just see the result, you can verify every step it took to get there. Now, I do see some questions, Nicole. I will not forget about yours. I see yours there. So let me keep going here because I have a lot of slides, but I will tackle this question. I will not forget about it. But keep them coming. So When we talk about the risks of generic SaaS-based AI dev tools, there's unfortunately a lot, right? And this 2025 Copilot incident was not the result of a cyber attack per se. It was the predictable consequences of architectural shortcuts. So Copilot operates entirely in the cloud, right? Every prompt, every context payload, every suggestion is processed remotely. And what users didn't realize was, until it was too late, was that this design introduced leak paths that even internal testing couldn't fully control. And I have all of the data and research to back up all of these claims. So if anyone would like to see this at the end of the session, please drop me a message in LinkedIn and I'll happily share it all. Now, when Copilot's inference artifacts were indexed by Bing and surfaced in public cache results, the implications were severe, to say the least. Internal source code, passwords, sensitive design logic were unintentionally made discoverable. And the organizations affected, IBM, Stripe, even Microsoft's own Redmond environments, found themselves facing not only reputational damage, but potential regulatory scrutiny. Now, imagine the same event unfolding inside of a SCIF or a DoD-IN enclave. The result wouldn't just be a PR crisis. It would trigger a cascade of audits, remediation actions, and likely a tool decertification. And that breach would violate both internal policy and federal mandates governing classified data. So this is why air-gapped AI isn't just a nice to have in our space, especially if you need it. It's a shield that's against predictable architectural failure. And Tabnine doesn't ship data out for inference. There's no cloud component to index. There's no search cache waiting to be scraped. Our design eliminates that attack vector because it was never there to begin with. Now, furthermore, into diving deeper into the SaaS-based AI tools, like your cursors, like your Windsurfs, your formerly Codium, they offer a compelling pitch to the average enterprise, right? It's fast setup, it's continuous improvement, built-in model hosting. All sounds great, but those same traits are fatal liabilities in aerospace and defense, military, public sector, any privacy or security conscious organization or enterprise. What these platforms obscure is the fact that their inference pipelines are mutable, right? Updated without notice and governed externally. And in April of 2025, a prompt injection exploit revealed these weaknesses at scale. Malicious inputs could cause the LLM to insert weird logic into generated code without the developer's intent or awareness, right? And because these tools used cloud-based models, teams had no way to freeze the version or control the parameters or inspect model behavior. In an environment where code integrity is mission critical, that's not a bug. That is a breach, plain and simple. You cannot certify or harden a black box agent governed by someone else's patch and patch cadence. And if that agent inserts exploitable code, the responsibility doesn't fall on the vendor. It falls on you folks, right? And with Tabnine, model inference happens locally. We provide policy-controlled generation, real-time validation, and version freezing. So if a rule is broken, the agent doesn't guess, it stops. Because in high trust environments, security is not a suggestion, it is a absolute. Now, ask any compliance officer what they fear most in adopting AI, and it's not hallucination, it's provenance, right? If your code assistant generates If the code that your assistant generates was trained on ambiguous or restricted data, you inherit the risk. It sucks, but that's the truth, right? And this comes that includes GPL violations, export controls, and IP ownership disputes. Copilot and others continue to train on massive swaths of public code, including code under non-permissive licenses. Even Microsoft's own documentation now includes disclaimers about unclear licensing attribution and model outputs. And to me, that's very frightening. That's shocking, even, right? That's a red flag for any organization operating under ITAR, CMMC, or commercial IP controls, right? So Tabnine sidesteps this risk entirely. There's our one of our one of our bigger security and privacy features not only allows you to run your own internal models fully inside your perimeter. We're LLM model agnostic, but we also have something called provenance and attribution, which allows for every code suggestion that's being generated by Tabnine, it looks at all publicly visible code on GitHub. And if there are any matches, it's going to provide that attribution for you. And what that does is show you the exact source code as well as the license type attached to that source code where it's getting that context from. Right? So your developers can make a much more informed decision, which we're going to show here shortly in the demo. Now you can take it even a step further and you can implement censorship, which again allows an administrator of Tabnine to take that decision completely out of the hands of their developer. They can say, we do not want to use any non-permissive code in our generation. So none of their developers will ever even see any of that non-permissive code being generated by Tabnine, right? So on top of that, every Tabnine suggestion comes with a diff, a context chain, and traceable origin. So you can show exactly what the model saw, why it responded the way it did, and which policies governed the outcome. And that's what makes Tabnine certifiable, auditable, and accountable. Because in defense software, plausible deniability is not a compliance strategy. You need something more than that. Now, we'll keep moving forward here. Now, sovereign AI development starts with control, right? And I guess furthermore, let's talk about the need, right, for sovereign AI development platforms or a sovereign development platform. It starts with control, right? And control begins locally. Once your prompts, context, or outputs leave your perimeter, you've compromised zero trust. There's no policy on paper that can walk that back. Now, that's why Tabnine runs fully locally. And again, we're talking in the on-prem air-gapped deployment space, right? From inference to enrichment, nothing ever crosses that firewall. The model lives inside your enclave. It cannot call out. It cannot drift. It cannot be silently patched by a vendor you don't control, right? Excuse me. But location alone isn't enough. True sovereignty means aligning AI to your internal rules. Maybe you need to block certain cryptographic primitives or enforce memory-safe outputs in real-time code or suppress calls to disallowed APIs. Tabnine supports sort of this runtime generation policies that enforce those rules upfront, not after deployment. So you can scope suggestions by language, library, or even repo context. And you can trace every generation back to a developer. You can even validate compliance in real time at the prompt, in the IDE, or within the CI/CD pipeline, right? And that's how sovereignty should look. Lockdown, inference, policy-driven AI behavior, and a paper trail for every output, not just to satisfy an audit, but to fulfill the mission. Now, explainability is much more than transparency. It's how you prove your systems work, the way that you say they do. And in regulated industries, especially defense, that proof must be ironclad. And Tabnine includes a reasoning chain with every suggestion, right? That means that not only what the model produced, but why. It reveals which files were used for enrichment, what logic path was followed, and what code pattern it aligned to. No guesswork, no opacity. Now, in most black box tools, when an AI suggestion fails, teams are left behind. There's no clear way to understand how the output was derived or whether it introduced risk. And with Tabnine, you can walk through that full cycle: the developer's input, the model interpretation, the suggestion rationale. And this explainability unlocks much more than compliance. It enables trust, which is hard to sort of earn, right? It's something that's you can't have a feature that's really it's a trust feature, right? It's compounded, right? So the developer's input, the model interpretation, the suggested rationale, and developers then understand the tool. Reviewers can vet the logic, and security teams can inspect behavior. And our friends, the auditors, they see complete reproducible code and record of decision making. And that's how Tabnine turns AI from a liability into a certifiable, defensible asset at any scale. But I should say we do gravitate towards your larger, much more complex, mature engineering teams. If you think you have a complex situation and environment, you are prime for us. That's where we really do well. The more difficult, the more complex, the more mature, the bigger the organization. We eat that for lunch. Now, excuse me. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits of air-gapped AI platforms, what that really means here. Now, mission-critical systems require repeatability. If software behaves differently between runs, it cannot be certified or trusted. But most SaaS-based AI tools constantly evolve behind the scenes. They push model updates, modify ranking algorithms, fine-tune behaviors using aggregate cloud data. And this creates what we call drift, right? Small behavioral changes that compound into risk. And Tabnine eliminates that risk because our platform runs in a deterministic mode. You determine which model is updated. You control the scope on every interaction. You can freeze the environment. And every suggestion is predictable, repeatable, and explainable. So that makes Tabnine uniquely qualified for environments where regression testing, code certification, and behavioral auditability are non-negotiable. If your AI output has to match across simulation runs, device deployments, safety inspections, drift is not an option. And Tabnine turns AI into that verifiable, stable component of your SDLC. Now, bear with me a little bit longer here. We are working our way to our slides. I'd say there's a few more left here, and then we'll be on our way. Now, many AI tools are fast, but incompatible with compliance. Again, they require that cloud access. They log telemetry to vendor-controlled dashboards. They can't explain how the code was generated, yet alone tie it to a policy. And Tabnine was built for this different world, a world where the audit comes first, where compliance is part of the architecture, right? So our platform operates without these cloud dependencies. Everything happens on your hardware, and you can define the rules for what's allowed. Because Tabnine, again, is logging every interaction locally, the prompt, the response, the rationale, the developer ID. You gain an immutable trail for every code suggestion, and that's powerful for audits, for training, review, and accountability. So you don't need to bolt on compliance on top of Tab9. It's already built in. Now, when we look at the competitive landscape a little more in depth, where others retreat, we advance. So let's be clear here. The rest of the field is retreating. Windsurf publicly confirmed it has ended support for on-prem and air-gapped deployments, referring it to some sort of maintenance mode. But anyone who's been in the space long enough knows that they're not coming back from that. Cursor remains SaaS only with no roadmap to change, and Copilot depends entirely on Azure hosted models, even if its private previews require persistent cloud access. We didn't retrofit here at Tab9 for secure use cases. We built for them. Our platform today is deployed, inside classified networks, inside air-gapped labs, inside sovereign cloud environments across, let's say, NATO-aligned defense agencies. Our competitors are walking away from this space. We're investing in it. So something to just make note of here. I think that's a really, really, really important point here. That if you do care about an on-prem or air-gapped deployment, that's something that's crucial to your team, your enterprise. For better, for worse, we are, and I'd say for better, we are the only option in the market. Now, Tab9's strengths is architectural alignment. We don't bring an AI tool into your environment. We bring an AI platform that respects your environment, your models, your policies, your runtime. And Tab9 works, again, with any model. We're model agnostic, but think of your Llama 3s, your Qwen 2.5s, your Gemmas. We support private and fine-tuned deployments. We offer IDE and CI/CD integrations without needing internet access. And this is why prime contractors, government integrators, and classified development shops turn to Tab9, not because it's convenient, but because it's built for environments where failure and privacy and control and security isn't an option. It's everything, right? And we stand alone in the space, and we welcome the responsibility that comes with it. Now, in secure, compartmentalized environments like SCIFs, the rules aren't just about how software behaves. They're about what it touches, what it can see, what it might expose, right? So anything cloud connected is disqualified by default. There's no such thing as safe enough, unfortunately, in a SCIF. Either a tool runs entirely within the boundary or it doesn't run at all. And again, that's where Tab9 thrives. Unlike tools that require a remote call for every suggestion, Tab9 runs its entire inference stack within the perimeter. There's no internet access, no shared infrastructure, no telemetry pipelines. You control the environment, the models, the context. Every decision, every generation, every logs lives under your infrastructure and under your rules. And that's what makes Tab9 highly suitable for these high-stake use cases, right? Like avionics firmwares, semiconductor manufacturers, aerospace defense, ISR software. The list goes on. But all of this is done never at the cost of your control. You're not trusting the cloud. You're trusting your own hardened systems. And with Tab9 operating safely inside that wire. Excuse me. So engineering leaders are in regulated industries know that it's not enough for code to work. It has to be certifiable. You need to prove where it came from, why it was generated, how it aligns to your engineering standards, right? And that's whether you're dealing with full life safety systems, system export controls. It all must be validated by, I believe it's DO 178C or equivalent standards. And Tab9 supports that full trace, right? So let's talk a little bit about the impact that these folks are seeing, right? Because it's real. We're seeing real impact on productivity, quality, and the developer experience. And this slide speaks to what matters most, I think, for engineering leaders in regulated industries. trust, performance, and proof. Tabnine is not just another code assistant. We are an enterprise-grade AI platform purpose-built for organizations where compliance, security, and control are these non-negotiables. Right. So starting with the numbers, our customers are seeing a 73% automation factor, which means that nearly 3/4 of their code, the repetitive routine coding tasks, are now fully handled by AI. And that's real measurable efficiency being unlocked. So with Tesco Software, a global enterprise, we help drive a 32% increase in dev productivity. And that's directly tied to their ability to ship features faster without compromising quality and security. They also reported an 84% lift in code quality compared to generic LLMs. And we know code quality is where tech debt either starts or stops. And most impressively, we help them, their teams double their test coverage, right? Which is a critical factor in engineering confidence, compliance, and speed. And on the right-hand side, you're going to see just a few of the enterprises trusting Tabnine. And it's important to note these aren't startups experimenting with AI. These are very mature, I'd argue very complex engineering organizations like GE Healthcare, like AstraZeneca, like Safran, like Huck Coburg. Now, operating in these industries where the margin for error is, most would argue, zero. And Tabnine earns their trust because we deliver AI that is context-aware, controllable, and built to integrate into that full complexity of the enterprise SDLC. And these teams aren't just gambling on AI; they're scaling with it confidently. Now, at Tabnine, we believe that we're entering not an industrial revolution where developers are replaced, but much more of a renaissance where human creativity flourishes alongside powerful AI tools. And we believe that the next chapter of software development isn't about fewer people, it's about better people equipped with smarter tools. AI doesn't replace creativity, it unlocks it. So the best teams won't be the ones chasing maximum automation. They're going to be the ones that combine speed and quality, who put governance and compliance in place, and who respect their developers' roles as creative architects. And that's what another term would be craft coding is all about, right? And that's what Tabnine is here to help folks here achieve. We're here to partner with you, not to sell hype, but to deliver disciplined, trustworthy AI that amplifies your teams and strengthens your outcomes. And together we can build the future of software development that's fast, secure, and crafted to last, right? Now, there's a lot going on here. So we'll take a second to break down this slide. Tabnine allows developers to produce noticeably more deliverables without extra effort. And this is achieved by context-aware suggestions, everything from auto-completing boilerplate and routine code to code review and generation and compliance adherence, right? And it lets engineers focus on the unique logic of their application. So by integrating deeply into IDEs, right, we support all of the most popular major players in the IDE space: VS Code, Visual Studio, Eclipse, the entire JetBrains family, Android Studio, NeoVim, if that's your speed, and around 600 different languages and frameworks and libraries. Tabnine is going to meet you and your developers where you're comfortable, where you currently work. And it's going to help save a time across a wide range of tasks. And this corresponds to higher velocity and throughput, which is a direct boost to the accelerate metrics in Dora, which is shorter development cycles without requiring additional headcount. And if you're not familiar with Dora or Space, we will be doing more talks on that. Go out to our YouTube channel and check out a talk we did about 2 weeks ago, because it really gives some good insight into how you find value through these tools. But let's break down what we're looking at here, right? Because I think this is what captures what makes Tabnine uniquely enterprise grade in the realm of AI software development. Now, at the center of this platform architecture is Tabnine's context engine. And that's the brain behind everything we do. Unlike black box AI models that make guesses based on outdated or generic data, Tabnine's context engine ensures that every AI action, whether it's generating code, reviewing it, or validating it, is grounded in your real world context. And I like to say personally that how do you develop trust? Trust is built on, or built from giving accurate answers, and accuracy is built on context. Context is king, queen, the whole royal family. So here's how it works in regard to this diagram. The first piece is multi-layered context ingestion. Right, so we're not just looking at the code in your open file. We're drawing from your entire workspace, your Git repositories, project docs, Jira issues, terminal outputs, knowledge base articles, even non-code sources of context like images, right? ER diagrams or features of the front end UI of your applications. The second piece is using semantic and vector memory. Right? So these two types of memory, they work together to ensure precision. We extract relevant entities like functions, APIs, dependencies, and then we create a live, ever-evolving knowledge graph of your system. And what that does is lets Tabnine reason about what exists and how it all works together. The third piece is context prioritization and assembly. And this is what really separates us from generic tooling. We don't throw everything into the LLM and say, hope it sorts itself out. Instead, our engine dynamically assembles a precise, enriched context package that aligns to the task at hand, whether it's a code suggestion, a test plan, documentation, so on and so forth. Now, why does that matter? Because in an enterprise environment, your code changes daily. Your architecture is layered and interconnected, and your security and compliance and performance standards are non-negotiable. So Tabnine's context engine ensures that our AI respects all of those boundaries. Excuse me. So you're getting speed without sacrificing trust, and that's huge. And now at the bottom is where you'll see all of it sort of come together. So we have Tabnine's AI agents, generate, test, document, review, fix, soon to be edit, which is very exciting. We'll talk about what that means here shortly, are all powered by this rich real-time context. So every action and output is policy aligned, architecture aware, and grounded in the systems your team actually works in. Excuse me. Now, let's talk about how we increase the quality of AI code recommendations, right? Within that context engine, there's sort of levels of personalization, 4 levels of context, if you will. The first being local context awareness. Second being connection to your code and knowledge bases. Third being coaching based on your standards and rules and guidelines. And the fourth being ultimately the customization of underlying models or the fine tuning of underlying models as needed. And I say as needed because I think often the juice isn't worth the squeeze there. Fine tuning is an exciting thing. Everyone wants to do it. There's a lot of talk about it in the space about how it makes X amount better, you get better results, yada yada yada. I think there's some very specific edge use cases, and I say that with respect to folks like COBOL teams or Verilog, Ada, Spark, these very poorly written, poorly documented languages. Outside of those, right, a good RAG and context engine will do everything you need and more, and will perform exponentially better. Why? Because it's dynamically evolving. It's not you don't have to go back and fine tune that context engine, right? Whereas with fine tuning the underlying models, anytime your code base changes, anytime anything changes within your code base, it's deemed obsolete, right? So you have to go back, you have to refine tune, and that's a laborious, resource exhaustive process that I would like for you folks to avoid if possible. So starting with that first level of context, though, this is local code awareness. And this is all the data points that we're going to look at, that we do look at. And there's about 15 of them, right? So we have our current file, open files, current selection, imported libraries, compiler syntax errors, terminal, other project files, project metadata, Git history, conversation history, the list goes on, right? And all of that gets factored in as local context. And just that alone, we've seen some folks experience a 70 to 80% increase in code suggestions, right? Or accepted code suggestions, which means that the suggestions are actually accurate and they're real, and these developers are trusting them. For the record, I'll just answer this really quickly because this is going to be a quick one. Sam, there is no context size. Feel free to put your biggest and baddest repositories in tab 9 to be context or to be indexed. Excuse me. We have some folks who have 10,000 lines. We have some folks who have 5 million. Folks that have 5-10 repositories, some folks that have, I kid you not, in the thousands. I joke around to say that there's nothing that tab 9 can't handle, but that is the truth. We encourage folks to use big, bad, scary, complex environments that they might not want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Tab 9 can index that and use that as context. We prefer it. This is a good way of putting it. Now, the second piece here is going to be connection to your code and knowledge bases. Right, so tab 9 connects to your other software development tools, right, including any Git-based repo. So think GitLab, Bitbucket, GitHub, of course, Perforce for you folks that are I don't want to say stuck using that, but stuck using that. We also now integrate into Perforce and other systems like Jira, for example, which allows you to, which allows AI to leverage your existing work to deliver better recommendations without sacrificing privacy, right? Being able to turn Jira tickets into production code that will make it past your pull request. Now, the third piece here is coaching, right? Giving explicit guidance on how to control tab 9 or how tab 9 will behave. That operates in the pull request as well as the IDE and the terminal. So tab 9 is going to generate code that will comply with all of your enterprise's standards. Now, the last piece, of course, is fine-tuning. But again, I think we know all of my thoughts around that. Think of it as a good sort of failback for hard to read, poorly documented code like Spark, Verilog, Ada, COBOL. We do have organizations that have fine-tuned their own models on exclusively on that coding language itself. Now, moving forward, let's talk about coaching and why that's really, really, really important. Because any AI code assistant, even a generic one, and any LLM can generate code. That's table stakes. But really only tab 9 can validate that code to the level of sophistication that is needed for enterprises to not push more tech debt into their own production environment. Now, that's incredibly, incredibly important because code generated by generic assistants is questionable in its security, which could devalue AI at your org. So this study looked at GitHub projects and Copilot generated code. It also examined GPT and at this time Codium, but as we all know now Windsurf. And they found on average 30% of code snippets generated by these tools have security weaknesses. The security weaknesses themselves were diverse, and they related to 43 different CWEs. And 8 of those CWEs found to belong on the recognized top 25 CWE list. That's a problem, right? Because you can't scale code generation if you're scaling security weaknesses, technical errors, and bugs. It's going to unfortunately take the metrics and scores when you have to do remediation work and rework. It's also not great for morale. So how we solve that is by our coaching agent, our code review agent, powered by our coaching engine, right? And that allows, and I see here this GIF is unfortunately not working, but that allows folks to codify their institutional knowledge, right? Software development best practices like maintainability rules, security rules, readability rules, areas where there's a lot of gray area, you can codify that knowledge. And once you've done that, now you have a code review agent that's completely customized and fine-tuned to your organization. It's aware of your best developers, engineering managers, code reviewers' knowledge, and it's made it on demand for every developer using Tabnine. So they can have that real accurate code review long before they push it into your SCM choice or tool of choice. And that's big, because I think if I ask the 47 of us that I can see on the call right now how to implement let's say a tracer provider in Go, we're going to get 48 different answers. And the tricky part is that all 48 of those answers are going to be correct. The only one, though, that's going to make it into production is the way that you code tracer providers. So having something like coaching is a very crucial step in, I think, AI-driven software development. Right now, using AI, or I should say, we're going to keep moving forward because I want to get to the demo, and I'm sure that you folks here also want to see the demo as well. Just to answer a couple questions here, I'll go back. Nicole, does it come with models with token requests, or do I have to bring your own API key? We do have a handful of models out of the box. Your Gemmas, your Quens, your GPT models, Claudes, Commandar, some ones from Mistral as well. But if you want to use something outside of that, your own specific model, you would bring your own API key. But great question. Can Tabnine support other revision control systems such as SVN Subversion? Also, a great question. Thank you very much, Sam, for shooting that. I am not 100% sure on how tested or hardened that other other systems such as SVN are within Tabnine, but I will make a note of that here, and I'll reach out to you, and we'll get you an answer on that in particular. But again, great question. Now, let's keep moving forward here, and let's talk about future proofing, because that's something I think everyone needs to be thinking of, especially when you're looking at AI software development. We give you complete control over your AI infrastructure to do that. And this is really important because many of our customers, as you can probably, I have a hunch from the questions, are developing their own LLMs. And we've seen, or as we've seen with the rise of Llama and Qwen and DeepSeek and Gemma, 1 month, one's great. The next month, another one's great. And then it continues, right? So this LLM's arms race, if you will, is far from over. And in my opinion, you're going to want flexibility. You do not want to have downtime having to work on integrations or switching gears with a new model. And with Tabnine, you get that, right? You have, or we have, deep expertise in leveraging and optimizing large language models for software development tasks. And we make a variety of those LLMs available to our customers out of the box. I would say there's two key benefits here that I want you folks to grok. The first is that you can trust that you will always have access to the latest and greatest models. In addition to Tabnine, or in addition to this, Tabnine's deployment of these LLMs, we deploy them across a wide array of developers and use cases, right? So we can accurately provide guidance on which LLMs currently are performing the best and for which use cases. Because not all LLMs are created equal, as I'm sure a lot of you folks here know. The second piece is that you have full control, not just over the models in use, but how we connect to them. You already have a private endpoint with a leading model provider? Great. We can support that. You're deploying your own open source model on a platform like Bedrock? Great. We can support that. You want to run Llama or Tabnine in your air-gapped environment? We can do that too. So with Tabnine, you are always in complete control of your AI infrastructure. And I can't say enough how important that is. So privacy, flexibility, and control is in play here. You can deploy Tabnine however you like, right? Of course, you can deploy us via SaaS. You can deploy us VPC. But you can also deploy us on-prem and air-gapped. And that's what's super cool about Tabnine, right? Is we're the only folks in the space that are doing that. And even within a single company, you can have multiple deployment types of Tabnine, right? Some teams on an air-gapped if they're working on very sensitive information. And maybe your web dev team, is on SaaS, right? Because they need more flexibility and or I shouldn't say need more flexibility, but the security requirements are less stringent for them, right? So that really gives you and your organization total control over your data privacy, performance, and architecture, which I encourage you folks to explore. Well, I shouldn't say I encourage you to explore the other solutions, but you'll find if you do explore that you won't get that anywhere else. This is very, very unique to Tabnine on how much control we give every organization over their infrastructure and data and privacy. And as we like to say here, any agent can write code. Ours earn your developers' trust and provide real world value. And we all know now, say what the issue is with these generic LLMs and generic AI code assistants, even generic agentic AI software development as a whole. And the real issue is that they lack context. They give generic answers. They generate more code and more tech debt. And using any of them today requires you to trade off between privacy and performance and protection. But we don't believe that you need to make that decision. So with Tabnine, we eliminate the need to trade off between privacy, performance, and protection. With Tabnine, you can get it all. And the way that we deliver on that is by using powerful LLMs, layering on our advanced context engine for personalization, and then combining that with AI agents that are fully human in the loop, giving you complete control over all of their behavior and their actions and keeping your engineers in the pilot seat continuously delivering value to the organization. Because I always tell folks, these are not your co-pilots, they are your agents. You should have complete control. So capping things off, why Tabnine? And then I promise we're going to jump right into this demo. You guys have been great sitting through the first hour here. Now that we have a good understanding, let's just put it all together. We built Tabnine for mission critical engineering. That means much more than just suggesting code. It means being deeply accountable to your developers, tightly aligned with your organization standards, and protective of your most sensitive IP. So controlled, right? With Tabnine, engineers stay in control. Our platform provides that full visibility into every suggestion. It's backed by references, explanations, and validation against your standards. And nothing is shipping without human approval. This isn't black box AI. This is transparent, explainable AI that engineers trust and actually adopt. The second piece here is it's grounded, right? It's onboarded into your organization. And Tabnine doesn't just understand programming. It understands your code base, understands your architecture, your guardrails. It runs inside your environment and adapts to your coding practices and follows your policies with real-time context and enforcement. This is AI trained to think like your team, not a generic model guessing from the outside. I like to say that think of Tabnine as a onboarded senior pair programmer in your organization who's been there for a decade, right? They're so incredibly knowledgeable, and that's what you get with Tabnine, right? So the third piece here is going to be that it's secured, right? And that's, I think, one of the most important, is that Tabnine protects what matters most in your organization, your code and your data. Our solution can run fully inside within your perimeter, whether that's on-prem or air-gapped or private VPC. There's no external calls, no third-party inference, just total control over your intellectual property and architecture with zero exposure to shadow AI risk. And that's truly what enterprise-grade AI should look like. And with Tabnine, we again eliminate that need to trade off between privacy, performance, and protection. This is built for engineering teams where trust and value isn't optional. It's mission critical. And I will say this isn't us just tooting our own horn. We've also been recognized by leading analyst firms, right? So most recently, Gartner recognized us in the critical capabilities report for AI code assistance, and looking at sort of the 12 or all 12 major providers in the space. We ranked first for 3 of the use cases and a very, very, very close second for the other 2 of the 5. But we're also top ranked by IDC, Everest Group, OMDIA. We are a favorite in the space. So without further ado, let's jump into the demo that I'm sure you folks here have been waiting to see. So give me a second here. Let me move some things around because I am a one-man band. Alrighty. Okie dokie. So let me pull up my screen here. All right. It seems to be that everyone can see this, but if you can't, please post in the chat. What we're going to do here is start off with a bit of an overview of the UI that folks are going to be interacting with and each of the agents that you're going to find along the way. Now, in this case, we are in VS Code, but again, we support all of the major IDEs. That is, IntelliJ, the entire IntelliJ, or the entire JetBrains family, excuse me. Eclipse, NeoVim, VS Code, Visual Studio, Android Studio. The list goes on. If you're using an IDE that's a relatively popular one, we support it. Now, within the IDE here, when you open up Tabnine and you have it installed, you'll see it here on the left-hand side of VS Code. This is going to open up Tabnine AI Chat. Now, there's a lot going on here, and some of this, I'm aware, might be different from the UI that you folks are seeing or have played around with. We've made some awesome changes that are going to be coming out in the near future. So starting at the top here, this is our switchable models, drop down, I should say. As a developer, this is what I have provisioned to me by my system administrator. As the administrator, you have complete control over which models are available to your developers. So of course, you can add whichever models you would like, but you have the end-all say in which ones are actually available to them within their IDE. So we're going to stick with 3.7 Sonnet today. That is just my It's my model of choice. I love that guy, so we're going to stay there. Now, moving below, you're going to see an area for prompting or querying, right? Very standard if you guys, I shouldn't say very standard, but very intuitive to other tooling that exists out there, right? Or based on other tooling that exists out there. Type in questions, comments, queries, and receive suggestions and answers and information back. You can get more specific by using @mentions to reference code blocks, files, methods, classes, the whole kit and caboodle. Now, next to that, or I should say below that, you're going to see something that's unique to Tabnine. This is our context scoping. So when we talk about being able to control every interaction, right? Having that full control over where Tabnine's going and the context that it's using, this is where you can do so. So what we'll do here is we'll say within the context scope, you can look at terminal, remote code base, local ID workspace, current file, but then we can also specify which specific remote code bases, folders, or files that we want to use as context as well, right? We can go into, let's say, a specific Bitbucket or GitHub, any SCM tool, and we can say, okay, I want to use this one, and we can use that as context for our queries. Now, below that, you're going to see that @mention as well as a backslash. Now, the backslash populates a list of drop-down menu, which has a list of, at the top, 5 agents that come standard with Tabnine, right? So we've built these to take the heavy lifting out of prompt engineering for you folks. Explaining code, generate tests, document, fix, and code explore. We'll get into each of those and what they do throughout this demo. Now, below that, you're going to see a handful that have been shared with me within this project, right? So we can create our own custom commands. Think of those as mini flows, agentic flows that can take the heavy lifting out of things that you find yourself prompt engineering on a daily basis. Now, these aren't my best and brightest of them, but it does accurately show what it does here. So you can also then share these, and this gets shared through your SCM tool. Now, moving forward, when we talk about non-code sources of context, with Tabnine, you can attach images, right? So think ER diagrams, turning those into Postgres schema. If someone on your marketing team says, hey, this front end of the UI is broken. We need to fix it. It's not working properly. They send you a screenshot with something's highlighted. You can insert that here as context. Tabnine will find exactly where that code snippet is. Excuse me. Next to that, this is where you can utilize our Jira integration, right? So it allows you, our Jira agent, allows you to implement and validate Jira tickets, right? Based on acceptance criteria, description, and other parameters within those tickets. Now, moving over the top here, I will briefly cover it because it's here in the UI and it's the gorilla in the room. This is our edit agent, right? So something we believe here in Tabnine is doing things without, we don't believe in autonomy, or we believe in autonomy without undermining, we believe in automation without undermining autonomy. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. Now, edit agent, very similar to that multi-step, multi-flow, or multi-action flow that you've seen probably floating around the space. But again, it's done with a fully human-in-the-loop method. So when you ask, let's say, to create something in Tabnine, it'll give you an implementation plan. It'll tell you the relevant files, and then it'll walk you through this plan, right? And you can either apply or discard or fine-tune each of these changes and sort of go through it systematically. A little bit faster than before, but still keeping your developers in the driver's seat. Now, next to that, you'll find our testing agent. And this is where you can generate comprehensive test plans for your code, right? BDD, unit testing, TDD, really any form of testing, you can exponentially increase how long it's taken or shorten how long it's taken and exponentially increase the code coverage and the test coverage uh, for that testing file. Now, moving on here, we will not really get into code review today within the IDE, but it is here and will be coming into the product in the near future. But we will show it within the terminal as well within GitHub Actions. Now, to the right of that, you'll find our settings, right? Historically, not a very sexy area of products or for a product, unless that product is Tabnine. I think there's a lot of really juicy stuff that goes on in here. And we'll talk about what that looks like later on. But this is what you're able to connect to Jira. You can determine your response length if you want concise or comprehensive. Every day is a school day for me, so we'll stick with comprehensive. You can add in your own custom commands. You can determine custom behavior, right? That allows Tabnine to, at a very high level, you can control what's being shouldn't say how Tabnine's operating, right? So you can localize Tabnine. You can have it respond in, let's say, following TDD. What we can do here is, for the sake of this demo, let's just add this in now. Have something copied here. We'll throw this in, and I'll add in one more at the top. Refer to me by name and mention my name frequently is Chris. Sweet. Let's do one more for TDD. Oh, it's already in here. Perfect. So you'll see now as we work through Tabnine or use Tabnine within this demo, it's going to operate at a high level a little bit differently, a lot of bit differently than it was prior, right? But it's giving you folks the ability to customize and fine tune it on a developer by developer basis. And then also we can turn on inline chat completion. So we'll keep that going there. So let's jump into the actual IDE itself and start looking at, or I should say the project itself, and we'll go over some more functionality on where you'll see Tab9. Excuse me. So, of course, you have code completions. That's where we all started here when we used to be called Cadota back at the time. That was our first venture into the space. Tab9 actually is the pioneer of the AI code assistant space. We were called Codota at the time in 2018. That's when we released our first agent, and that was a code completions model for the Java IDE. Geez, that's a long time ago. And look where we are now. But of course, we still have code completions. That's something that's just come standard and should be standard in all applications or software development platforms. But I digress. What you'll see here is this auto completion with the highlight of the 17th rule. God bless anyone that has to follow all 17. But that's not important. What is important is Tab9 is going to automatically recognize your intent, right? So in this case, if I am typing a new rule, it's going to provide an auto completion there. If it's documentation, it's going to be aware of what I'm documenting and help auto complete that. Same goes for testing and so on and so forth. Now, at the top of each block, you're going to see something called the Tab9 code lens. That is the edit, test, explain, document. And if there was something wrong, you'd see a fix here. And that is just a quick action way to access the same agents that you see here within our dropdown that comes standard within Tab9. Now, the last piece of where you'll find Tab9 within your IDE UI is going to be when you type in Command I on a Mac. I know that is might be a conflict for some JetBrains user, but don't worry, you can remap buttons. I've already done it on mine. But doing that is going to populate this dropdown or open up this dropdown. At the top, you can use natural language, everyday conversation conversational language to ask questions, change code, type in prompts, and get back answers and suggestions. You can also specify code snippets, determine your scope, as well as access our quick command sort of agents, right? So your fix, document, explain, and explore. But let's start going through the actual project itself, or should I say a usual cycle within the SDLC for a developer. Let's see here. Okay. Sorry, just had something pop up on my other screen that I needed to close. All right, so planning phase. And I assume there are some questions coming in chat. Don't worry, I am going to go back here at sort of breaks within the demo, and I'll tackle all of those. So let's start with planning, right? Onboarding into a project. And we will go over here. Start by reloading my window just to be safe. Okay. So here, whoops, here we are. All right. So the first thing we're going to do as a developer, I just got out of a meeting. I need to work on a new code base. New for me, legacy code base for the company. How do I do that? How do I understand what it is that I'm working on? Because now I have a tickets assigned to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our Code Explorer agent. And what Code Explorer does, it's a built-in quick action within Tabnine that users can invoke when starting a new conversation, right? An empty or at an empty state. Now, Tabnine chat returns a high-level summary of the project's key elements, including runnable scripts and this case, whoops, where's my mouse? The tech stack and how to get started, right? You'll notice that Tabnine's not just doing code suggestions, but it also does terminal commands to make sure we have everything necessary. And then it'll also give me a little bit on project structure. Now, what's cool is it's going to provide a handful of follow-up questions, right? So we can dive a little bit deeper into what we're working on. Again, allowing developers to onboard and ramp up exponentially faster than reading poorly documented code and readmes. Not to call anyone out here, but I would be curious to know if anyone thinks that without looking at their code or having not seen their code before, if they think an average developer could understand what's actually going on based on documentation and README. I think most folks would be shocked to find that they probably cannot, right? So something like this is incredibly helpful for getting the developer to ramp up exponentially quicker. And thanks for bearing with me. I've clearly have something stuck in my throat this morning, or throat, excuse me. So I apologize for all the coughing. Now, we have an understanding here of what exactly this is. It is a authentication and user roles within the fraud detection dashboard. That's clearly what we are working on. In general, this is a fraud detection dashboard, and it seemingly is written in Next.js. Okay, so now I have an idea. I know what I'm working with. And we can look at the references here to see exactly where it's pulling that context from. Cool. So we want to dive a little bit deeper, let's say, into a specific area. That's when we'll use our Code Explorer. So let's jump over here to our sidebar. And let's just say, or sorry, Code Explain. And what Code Explain is going to do is it's going to look at most, it can look at a full project file, but it does really, really good at just looking at blocks of code, right? So it's going to explain in full entirety exactly what that block of code is. And now, as a developer, I have full visibility, and I'm fully onboarded and ramped up into the project I'm working on. And in this case, I mean, I guess you guys don't know this. I know I'm going to probably be doing a ticket here that's based on customizing the sidebar, right, and customizing the nav bar. So I want to dive and learn a little bit more about it. And now I do. So now we're going to move on to the next phase, which is code generation, creating, right? So let's jump over to Jira here. And again, we don't have to, but this is something that will show just sort of the how this all works, right? This is a sample demo board we have here. There's 61 tickets in my queue or in the to-do queue, but we look at what's in my queue in particular. It's 16 with, geez, not a 16 and not a whole lot of progress made, but that's okay. What's important to call out here is once we are in our IDE and we initialize that integration, that agent, you're only going to see 2. Now, why is that? With Tabnine, we're not showing every ticket that's assigned to every team member that you're working with. We're only going to show 2 things. One, the tickets that are assigned to you, the individual developer that is integrated with Jira. And 2, only the tickets that have been active within the last 30 days, right? Anything outside of that will not be shown within this dropdown. You can update the ticket and it'll appear here instantly. But in this case, we only want to focus on the active ones because that's what my boss wants me to do. That's what my team's working on, is a redesign of this application. So let's run this just to see. Okay, we're orange and green. That's not great, but sure someone loves Florida somewhere. Let's jump back here. Okay, so we know it's green. We know how it works. Now let's ask for an explanation to make sure that we're using the right ticket. So we can say, explain this ticket. And this is going to take place prior to us implementing, but without having ever left the IDE. Theoretically, we didn't need to go to Jira. Okay, so this is taking it to purple, and this is taking it to blue. This is the acceptance criteria and the consideration. Perfect. What we should do now is let's go in and let's say to implement this ticket. Implement this ticket. And you don't have to explain the ticket if you don't want to, but again, it's helpful to not ever have to leave your IDE. So first we will update the sidebar component, then we'll have to update the navbar. Okay. So first things first here, when you are looking at suggestions, you're going to notice a big apply here in the top right corner. Now, this is a small but mighty feature within Tabnine, and I think arguably one of the better ones. Clicking apply is going to insert that code exactly where it should be, regardless of code of current file that's open and regardless of cursor location. It's going to give you the ability to look at a show diff, accept or review those changes, and ultimately accept or discard. So we will accept those and we'll move to the next one. So there is attribution being blocked, right? This is something that is turned on for me. Thus, it's going to show that my attribution is active and ultimately blocking this code. Why? Because it's showing GPL 3.0 licenses. So I can't use that code. It's not allowing me, Tabnine won't allow me to actually bring that in. So as a developer, it's enforcing compliance, which is something that inherently I don't care about, right? That's not what I'm being graded on. I'm being, folks want me to release good quality software and produce fast. So this is a guardrail for you DevSecOps or compliance folks on the call. This is really big. It doesn't matter what your developer is doing. They won't be able to use that code. Now they can ask for Tabnine to help regenerate it outside of that licensing restrictions, and they can do that, right? But it will ultimately block this initial first pass. And then we'll apply this as well to the layout. Great. Of course, there's some more attribution there. and update new components to use the tailwind. We can apply that as well. Looks good. And there's some other things that we're not able to do. Now we'll check references here. Now it's important to acknowledge that within these references, you can see that Tabnine is using my local context as well as it's using remote context, right? So it's looking at my entire code base and it's asking, where do we have other implementations or codes similar to this? And it's using how we've written that code as guidelines for the code suggestion here, right? Now, some of these were, and I turned this on mistakenly prior to coming into this demo, so I should turn attribution off. But it's helping me, again, fine-tune and make sure what I'm producing is of quality. Now, we know that this hasn't been properly implemented fully, but what we can do is we can ask Tabnine to verify that implementation. So we can say validate implementation or this ticket. And we'll go back through and it'll compare the acceptance criteria and the description along with my implementation. Perfect. Okay. So now I have a full validation and it's not telling me, hey, everything's just good to go. You're done with the ticket. It's saying, there's actually a whole lot of extra validation that needs to be done and tested. And once these are complete, you can actually, we can move forward with the step, right? But again, that is incredibly important and crucial to folks having those guardrails when generating or creating new code. Now, moving forward, let's jump into testing. So we're going to switch gears and jump back over here. And let's open up our testing agent. Now, what we're in right now is a simple password generator CLI application, right? I wrote this in Java. Now, what we'll do here is we'll generate a test plan for code. So clicking test plan, we'll select the code we want to generate. There's two ways of doing this, right? So there's multiple ways of doing this. You can use our code lens. You can go from the AI chat. You could also use our dropdown. But the concept of testing, I think, should be broken into two buckets. There is testing from scratch, right? Creating a test file from scratch. And then there is creating a test file or reiterating on a test file that you currently have. Now, for the sake of the demo here today, we're going to be reiterating on one we've previously created. Why is that? We found a lot of folks who are Tabnine customers are more often than not going from 1001 to 1002, right? So they're already starting with some form of testing in place. So what we'll do here is we'll select the test file. We do currently have one. We'll find it here. If you don't, it would just create a new one for you. We'll hit OK. Now, what Tabnine's doing is it's generating this comprehensive test plan, but it's using all of these tests as existing context. So you'll notice here that you'll see these existing tests here within the bottom. Now, what Tabnine will do is then generate these unit tests, for example, that are following or building off of what I currently have, but different, right? Ultimately getting me to full test coverage or full code coverage exponentially faster than historically it's taken me. I can then reiterate on this, which is what we encourage folks to do, right? Add the test that you like. We'll start with this one. Clicking on that test will prompt Tabnine to generate the actual test itself. You'll then be able to apply that test within the test file. Right, clicking apply will put it in exactly where it should be within the code. Perfect. And then you'll see here that there is a little red check that says, okay, this has been added into your project. Reiterating on this and prompting Tabnine to go through this process again, you'll find the new test will be in the existing tests, and Tabnine will work to create new tests outside of that current scope of what's covered. And again, unit testing, BDD, TDD, the whole kit and caboodle. We have some folks who have done some pretty remarkable things with test automation and generation when it comes to using Tabnine. Now, moving forward, let's talk about documentation. Now, Tabnine's smart. It's aware that I've already added in docs for a majority of everything in here, test-wise. But what it does is it will generate documentation. You can see here, where is this new one? As it generated code, it just knew that I was going to ask for this and ask for it in this specific format. So it's doing it automatically. But let's say we don't have documentation written yet for some code. Let me just find something here. All right, we'll do this guy. You can do it a handful of ways. One, we can just click the code lens here. And what Tabnine will do, will generate docs for that entire block. Right, it'll show us a review diff here within the IDE. We can say, okay, this looks good. I want to add this here. We'll hit accept. Whoops, must have broken something here somewhere. All right. Let me just do a different form. We'll do it this way. So let's say you didn't want to use the code lens and we want to use chat. We can go in, we'll select document code. It'll prompt us to select the code if we didn't have it already selected, but we do. And now Tabnine will generate documentation specifically for that. And we can copy, whoops, go in. Whoops, I don't know why I'm doing this here. Well, seemingly I must have broke something here, but we're going to keep on moving on here while I reload this window. Everyone loves a live demo. I love it when it doesn't always go according to plan, but that's the nature of the beast. So let's continue to move forward. Excuse my word vomit there. And let's talk about code review and testing, right? So we'll just show this here because it's already up. Within the IDE, or the terminal, I should say, we have our code review. And our code review is powered by our coaching agent, right? Or our coaching engine. So our coaching engine lives, let's see here, within Tabnine's admin console. You can access it here through coaching guidelines. Now, what this will allow folks to do, again, is codify that institutional knowledge. Think of all of the rules that your best engineers, developers, code reviewers just inherently follow, right? Rules around correctness, performance, maintainability, security, readability, all these areas where there's so much gray area, right? There's, what might be correct to you at your organization is different than what's correct at my organization and what's correct at Mike's and Sally and Susie's, right? All while being technically correct, the only one that's really going to make it into production is the way that they do it at their org. This is what coaching allows you to do, is really get specific and sophisticated with the guidelines and the rules that you're enforcing for your software developers, right? Now, there's two ways to sort of add new rules. You can simply do it from importing a CSV sheet with plain English. Tabnine, like this description, Tabnine will add good and bad examples all of which that you can edit, right? Everything is customizable. Now, again, what we've done then is once we've added all of these in, you can also, point Tabnine to what we call a golden repo. We'll analyze and extract a rule set from that, which is then the same process. You can then fine tune and polish that rule set. But what you've done is then just augment your best engineers, developers, leaders' knowledge, and we've made it on demand for every developer within the IDE or who's using Tabnine. Now, within the IDE itself, just to give you an example of what it looks like, I can tell Tabnine to review my repo, and it's going to send out all of these files that have changed since my last commit. And then when you go to actually look at a review here, this is a great suggestion, right? Or a great example. It's going to show the file, the violation, which specific line, the to-do, a description, right? How serious it is, and then, okay, it's a modification, and this is the code that I need to insert. We can take it a step further, and you can turn on terminal as context and ask Tabnine to consider what's in the terminal within code review and help fix those changes, right? And it will ultimately go through that flow and help those developers polish up their code before they're submitting it as a PR. Now, on the flip side, what does that look like from a code reviewer's lens? Well, this is one of our developers or SEs, Josh, and Josh just submitted a PR. What I can do is go through and say, okay, here is the file in question. Here's the code in question. Here's the rule that was violated. Uh-oh, it's critical. This is serious. Here's my to-do, right? And that's going to be for every issue that was found. I can commit the suggestion. I can also have a conversation with Josh and find out a little bit more about what happened, what went wrong, what he did differently, and then have a learning educational experience with him, which I think is what code review should be. It shouldn't be rushed. It shouldn't be a bottleneck. It shouldn't be anxiety inducing, or not too anxiety inducing. It should be an educational, relatively enjoyable experience. And I think that this coaching engine, which gets delivered via the code review agent, is really helping folks do. Because we saw so many folks were becoming so productive with Tabnine and generating so much code that code review ended up becoming a bottleneck. Not necessarily because it was bad code per se, right? But just the concept of code review and having to do it at that magnitude. When you have developers who are 50 to 80% more productive and efficient, it's a lot for folks to handle with that same headcount. So just to give folks, I guess, a little bit more clarity here, code review linter. Linter we've had for a very long time. Everyone's probably very familiar with those. Code review is very new, right? An AI-driven code review agent, very, very new. Ways to think about it, linting is relatively fixed, right? It checks a code against predefined rules, patterns, primarily focusing on style, syntax, basic logic issues. Think of it as a very strict grammar checker that follows a rigid rule book. On the flip side, Tabnine's code review agent is more like an experienced senior engineer who deeply, deeply understands your team's specific context and preferences, right? So first piece is that the code review is context-aware analysis, I would say. The code review agent understands your entire code base, your team's patterns, your organizational guidelines, right? It can identify code that doesn't align with how your team specifically writes software, even if the code is technically correct. That's a really, really, really big point there. Linting only checks against universal rules and like regex patterns with no understanding of your team's specific approaches or preferences. The coaching agent can then also be coached through plain language instructions, right? You can explain it complex architectural principles or business logic in plain English that you want it to enforce. Where linting, again, offers configuration through technical rules and regex patterns and really only understands high-level concepts. The fourth piece or third piece, I would say, is the feedback quality, right? You look at what Tabnine's code review agent is generating in regard to feedback as opposed to a linting tool. Much more detailed explanations of issues with suggested improvements, not just you can't do this and give you a W3 school's boilerplate code to help fix. That's not helping anyone, especially not in an enterprise environment, right? It's not going to work. It's a generic code. So I should argue it's not going to work for any environment. When you look at linting, it's only going to offer, again, that brief error message, right? And a basic fix suggestion. The last piece would be scope of analysis, right? So Tabnine can evaluate architectural decisions, implementation approaches, security implementations, performance considerations, maintainability and readability in the context of your specific application and knowing how your organization globally writes code. Linting is primarily focused on code level issues like formatting, potential bugs, and basic best practices. So think of linting as a spell check, and Tabnine is more like having that senior dev who knows your code base inside and out like the back of their hand. Let me jump over here and see if there are any questions here. Nicole, sorry I missed this, but is it bring your own API key and Olama, or is it more like Cursor, which comes with the Nurse Claude 3.7? Depending on what deployment style you choose, but it is more of a bring your own API key. Good question, though. When do we plan to support Claude 4.0 and local models? Also another good question. Something our team is actively exploring and testing and benchmarking right now. There are not a lot of models that get produced or get pushed out. I would argue are rushed, not by us internally, but by the actual model providers. And that's understandable. Everyone's producing an LLM right now. There's a lot of really, really, really big players in the space that are putting a lot of eggs in that basket. I say that because models are changing daily, weekly, monthly. They're coming out daily, weekly, monthly. And you get one, for example, like let's say Claude 4.0. 3.7 V2 or 3.5 V2. I can't remember the specific one that had the V2 with it. Our opinion and a lot of other folks' opinions was that it wasn't that great. Everyone was really, really excited because of the success of Claude 3.5. And when that one came out, it performed not as of high quality or up to the same standards as a lot of folks had expectations for. So with Tabnine, we're not, again, just chasing the hype, right? We're not jumping off the bridge because everyone else is jumping off the bridge. We're going to test and make sure that it's a fun jump and a safe jump and a good jump. And if it is, then we'll add it in. But we do it at a fast pace, and we are actively working on that as we speak here. So in due time, Mikhail, will it keep docs in sync with future code edits? Correct. Yes, as you change code, it will generate suggestions that also include updated documentation. Now, I will say the test have failed, given that you were not able to do some of the code because of the attribution thing. Yeah, so I have not actually ran any tests themselves. I have added the tests within the generator test document, but have not actually ran the tests themselves. But correct, they will fail because that implementation is not correct. But just the concept of building these fast tests and doing it with a personal touch is what we were showing there. Happy to dive further into testing, though, at a later date here. How's it better than GitHub Copilot? I mean, in terms of overall completion and the code generation suite. That is a great question. And I've been asked this a lot over the last few weeks. I'll start sort of at the top here. Overall completion and the code generation suite. So I have to mention it just because it is part of the big value prop here. First of all, would be that they're not model agnostic, and that does matter with code generation suite, right? So you're stuck or locked into certain vendors with GitHub Copilot. That's not the case with Tabnine, right? LLM agnostic. You can upload and implement any LLM or SLM of your choice. Why does that matter? Because you're not going to be locked into a specific vendor. And we know, as we've been talking about for maybe the last hour and a half here, that the LLM's arms race is far from over. The models are constantly changing on a week-to-week basis. So you're going to want flexibility there. And a model, or which model you use, directly impacts the code that's being generated. A poor model is going to generate, I'd argue, poor code even with great context. And a great model also might generate better code, but still not great unless you have great context as well. So model does play a big piece here. But that also leads me to my second piece, context. One of the more frustrating things that I heard folks say, not frustrating, but it wasn't frustrating for me, but frustrating for them, is the level of accuracy and transparency and context that you get within GitHub Copilot. The accuracy that Copilot provides, or the answers that they provide, are not inherently very accurate. We were just at NDC Oslo, which is, I'd argue, a very developer focused and one of like the most, while being very tech forward, very grassroots in the sense that it's real devs attending the conference. And over and over and over again, the number one complaint we heard that entire week was, I don't love the answers that GitHub Copilot's giving me. I think they're crappy. It's producing security vulnerabilities. And then inversely, I don't trust that code, right? I don't trust the tool. And it goes back to our whole conversation, right? Accuracy builds trust, and trust or accuracy builds trust, and accuracy comes from good context. Another huge piece of why Tabnine, or where Tabnine separates itself from GitHub Copilot, is our context engine. So we talked about that briefly in this call earlier. If you were not here for that, I encourage you to go watch the demo. It's right around the midway point of our slides, but it shows a big architecture diagram and how we treat context here at Tabnine. So the level of accuracy of what we're producing in a head-to-head comparison that we did, and I can find those information for you in that research, we were at 82% of accepted code suggestions versus a Copilot and a Windsurf at, I think, sitting in the 30s. I'll have to double check there, but that again speaks to the level of context, right? Which is another huge piece that I think is a gap between GitHub and us obviously having the better context engine. The last piece I would say here is what this whole talk is about, right? Mission ready code. And how do you develop mission ready code, mission critical code? You need something that you can control the infrastructure from. With GitHub Copilot, you don't get that kind of control. There is no on-prem or air-gap deployment. Thus, you are subject in one way or another to third-party tooling and other folks doing what they wish with your data. That's the other huge piece I think that separates us from GitHub Copilot, is that you can deploy Tabnine on-prem, air-gapped. There's zero data retention policy. I've sang this dance or done this dance the entire morning, right? But there's a level as to why that is very, very important and mission critical, table stakes for folks in public sector and aerospace and defense and privacy and security conscious industries. You need to have an air gap deployment. So it's a combination of a handful of things, but a great question nonetheless. I will say there's also explicit behavior of how the AI behaves with Tab9, right? So you have user defined do's and don'ts, and with GitHub Copilot, you really don't get that, which also affects the context and what's being generated. Let's see here. Is there a ranking of Tab9's code generation agent versus the other ones? We do have one somewhere. Let me find it, Nicole, and I can send that over to you. If you want to reach out to me via LinkedIn and shoot me a message there, that will ensure that I get that to you in a timely manner. But I will say we've been on here for almost 2 hours now. I will pause and stop for any other questions. That really takes cake of what I wanted to go over today, this morning. If there are any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. If not, I'll give it another minute here and then we'll wrap up for this week. But as always, I'll be here next week. If you have any questions, don't worry. You can ask them to me a week from today. Next week, it'll be at 7 a.m. PT, 3.5 hours earlier than this week. But yeah, it's always a pleasure. Enjoy these conversations and demos more than just about anything else I do in my job. So appreciate everyone's engagement and potential drift originated from Dr. Sandra. This is a good question. What about potential drift originated from Tab9 updates? That is that's a good question. I'm trying to think if I have a good answer for that one. It's been a while since I've been stumped on air, but there is no silent drift, to my knowledge, right? In air gapped and sovereign deployments, Tab9 doesn't update automatically or silently. In a SaaS-based AI tool that continuously updates model weights, inference logic, or context strategies in the background, they would. But Tab9's enterprise and on-prem versions give you that full control over excuse me, model versioning, inference pipeline, update cadence. You're choosing when and whether you want to upgrade the model. You can freeze model weights indefinitely to maintain deterministic behavior. When it comes to the pipeline, all AI generation logic stays local. So there's no cloud-based fallback or no hidden code changes that could affect output. And updates are never pushed, right? Not without your approval. So you decide if and when to test and adopt a new release. So model drift, for example, even small changes in weights or logic can invalidate certification baselines, right? So your DO 178C, excuse me if that's incorrect. I've done a lot of research the last couple months. ISO 26262 and EIC 61508. If those three were all correct, someone please tell my boss, because I think that's a good one for me to remember. Also does audit logs, right, and compliance assumptions in classified workflows, right? All of those can be invalidated if there's model drift, right? Small changes in weight or logic. So with Tab9, you get that full determinism, right? So the same input produces the same result across time, teams, and systems, unless you decide otherwise. I hope that answers your question. That's it's fun. I initially thought I got stumped, but I didn't. Someone's gonna have to try a little bit harder. But that's a great question, Dr. Sandra. I appreciate you chiming in there. Um, of course, yeah, there is recordings of this on our YouTube channel. All previous recordings are up there, so that's at Tab9 AI. One thing you'll notice, every 2 weeks, we go through a different theme, a different show, if you will. We talk about slightly different things within the demo, but try to keep that a little bit more familiar. But our story on what we're talking about changes on every 2 weeks, right? Last week's was vibe coding versus craft coding, a really fun talk that I'm gonna do another one of, I believe, in early July. And then prior to that was on metrics, right? So door and space metrics, another really important conversation that I wish I could stay on for another hour and talk to you folks about. But how do you find value? How do you drive value from AI software development tools? It's not on lines of code being produced. I can almost bet the farm that the 67 of you still on this call do not get raises or promotions, or your OKRs are not around lines of code. So encourage folks to go check out that Dora in Space metric driven Tabnine Office Hours from 2 weeks back. But yeah, you can find everything on our YouTube channel. All of them are pre-recorded, or not pre-recorded, are recorded there. Obviously, this is not pre-recorded because we're doing it live. But if there are no other questions, we can wrap things up, and we'll see you folks 3.5 hours earlier next week. And as always, thank you for stopping by.